Hello, welcome to the Inside the Birds NFL Wild Card Week preview show. I am Geoff Mosher, and into the playoffs we go. These are the times that we relish. These are the moments when legends make their mark on the game. These are the times that give us those moments that we'll always remember, whether it's the Music City Miracle, if everybody can remember that game between the Titans and the Bills, or the Minneapolis Miracle between the Saints and the Vikings, the Philly Special. So many great moments that are etched in our memories over decades of great NFL postseason. It's what makes the postseason so special. The NFL postseason, it's 4 weekends of game action. When you think about that, that's a quarter of the regular season. Even though the regular season flies by, you get some unbelievable game action, starting, of course, with this weekend being wild card weekend, then divisional round weekend, one of my favorites weekends of all of sports, and conference championship weekend until you get to, of course, the Super Bowl, and just so many great memories from that the NFL postseason leaves us with. Some of them are great, Eagles fans, 4th and 26, Philly special, Brandon Graham sack on Tom Brady. But then there are also some moments in the postseason that Eagles fans would love to forget. Same thing with Buffalo Bills fans. Scott Norwood, wide right in the Super Bowl. Ask anybody from the Bills. They know you're either a hero after the playoffs or you're a zero. And anybody from those Bills teams that lost 4 straight Super Bowls would tell you that I'm sure it keeps them up at night and every time they watch an NFL playoff game. The Immaculate Reception, the Tuck Rule game, the frozen, not the frozen tundra game way back, but the one between the Packers and the Giants where Tom Coughlin had the red face and it was minus 15 degrees. Uh, Giants fans may remember the botched snap game against the San Francisco 49ers. Guy's name was Trey Junkin, long snapper. He botched it. And the Giants lost the game because of a botched field goal snap against the 49ers, a playoff game. Like I said, you either become a hero or you're a GOAT. Not the greatest of all time GOAT, the GOAT, the zero GOAT. That's how it works in the NFL playoffs. Whatever happens over the next month or so, you know that there are going to be some players who are going to emerge as having either all-time moments or becoming players who seize the moment. And there will be players who go down as didn't come up big in the moment. As we get ready for the start of the playoffs, two things really come to mind here. There are two major storylines. I mean, there are a lot of great storylines. There are two really big ones that stick out to me. One of which has sort of gone under the radar, almost completely under discussed since the start of the regular season. And that's the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are looking to become the first team in the Super Bowl era to three-peat, to win 3 straight championships. The Steelers of the 70s didn't do it. They won 4 Super Bowls in a 5-year span. The Cowboys didn't do it in the 90s. They won 3 in a 4-year span, but not in a row. And the Patriots, of course, of Tom Brady, the dynastic Patriots, they won 3 in 4 years early in Brady's career and then won 3 more in a 5-year span later in his career. But nobody has won 3 straight Super Bowls. And if there was ever a team that was poised to do that, it would be the Chiefs. Not only are they great and have a Super Bowl champion head coach with Andy Reid and the 3-time Super Bowl champion quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, they've won 3 Super Bowls already, and they've won 3 of the last 5 Super Bowls, and they just finished after all that their most successful regular season, going 15-2, and let's be honest, they were 15-1 in games that they tried to win. And yet, despite all that, despite the fact that they've won the last 2 Super Bowls, despite the fact that they just set a record for wins in franchise history, they're not even the betting favorite to win the Super Bowl. That distinction, according to our friends at DraftKings, belongs to the Lions. I almost sense that people are more skeptical and would be more surprised if the Chiefs won the Super Bowl this year than in years past. And people think they're more vulnerable this year than years past, even though they just went 15-2. That's kind of hard to believe. It's kind of hard to believe that there are other more darling stories, whether it's the Bills and, of course, the Lions, who are the prohibitive betting favorite to win the Super Bowl. Hard to believe that the Chiefs are facing more skepticism about their three-peat when they may be the best team, the most poised team to three-peat that we've seen in quite a while. Uh, they, in my mind, are among the top two best teams in the NFL. You can say they've been vulnerable. You can say the referees love them and have bailed them out of wins. There's no question about that. They've gotten some very favorable calls, as Super Bowl champion teams and dynastic teams tend to do. It's how quickly we forget. Tom Brady was the beneficiary of many good calls. I even mentioned the tuck rule game earlier in this a few minutes ago, right? So the Chiefs aren't the first team that get first Super Bowl champion team or juggernaut team to get a lot of good calls from the referees. It's just how it goes. You sleep in the bed that you make, and the bed that the Chiefs have made for the last 5 years is a king-size bed that's very pristine, very luxurious, and so they get the calls. It's what happens. You know what? Everybody complains about it, but they want their team to be the team that wins that often that they get the calls. Because when their team gets the calls, they don't complain about it. It's only when the Chiefs and the dynastic teams do people complain and say, they're treated so unfairly. They get more calls than everybody else. But if it's your team and you're winning that much and the refs are in your pocket, so to speak, you're fine with it. And you'll always say that's just the way it goes in the NFL because that's the way it is. So the Lions are, to me, the other major storyline in the NFL. They are, according to DraftKings, the favorite to win the Super Bowl at plus 295. And by the way, the Chiefs are second at plus 350. So there's some distance there between where the odds makers see at DraftKings see the Lions and the Chiefs as far as being a Super Bowl favorite. It's not that close. All right. So the second storyline is the Lions. They are the apple of everybody's eye. Everybody wants their coaches. Their offensive coordinator is probably going to finally take a head coaching job. Their defensive coordinator has got about a dozen interviews lined up, and they both deserve it. And the Chiefs have overcome a tremendous amount of adversity to get the number one seed in the NFC a year after they lost the NFC Championship to San Francisco. And Dan Campbell stood at that podium, and he probably couldn't have been more prescient. He stood at the podium after the loss and said, "Am I proud of my team, my Detroit Lions? The team that everybody used to love to make fun of, a team that everybody counted out, team that's never won a Super Bowl. Was he proud of his Lions for making it all the way to the NFC Championship?" He said, "Damn right I am. But you know why I'm sad," he said, and he was upset, is because you just never can count on that opportunity happening again, which rings true for Eagles fans who saw the Eagles play a great game against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, brought back a pretty good team last year, got off to a 10-1 start, and then watched the wheels fall off, and they didn't even get out of the first round. Dan Campbell was being honest and prescient. He didn't know if the Lions would get back to the NFC Championship game, and it might be a struggle for them to do it. And it's almost as if his prophecy was somewhat fulfilled because the Lions have lost player after player after player after player on their defense. And they have overcome so much of that injury loss to be able to make it to the number one seed. And they are a juggernaut offensively. Reports of their defensive demise have been exaggerated. Yes, they can be had defensively. Yes, they have given up points at times. All right, no doubt about it. They are not a elite defensive team, despite what the statistics say. They benefit greatly from what their offense is able to do, but the offense is a juggernaut, and they won 15 games because of it. And they will get some players back on defense, and Aaron Glenn has done an amazing job as their coordinator. They play like they're all starters. They don't play like a bunch of guys who are out there not knowing what to do, where to be. They are well coached. This is maybe the best coach team in the NFL from top to bottom. And they look like they will be able to make it to the NFC Championship game. Getting that first round bye for them was huge. They are trying to win their first Super Bowl. It will not be easy. The NFC is tough. It is better from top to bottom, 1 through 7 in the playoffs than the AFC. The AFC has some juggernauts, but from 1 through 7, the NFC looks a little tougher. It should be a great postseason. Like I said, four weekends of game action that are just unbelievable and will leave us with some incredible moments. And I can't wait to recap it week after week as I do the show all the way up into the Super Bowl. It will go by quickly. It always does. And there will be some new heroes and there will be some new goats. And again, I don't mean the greatest of all time goats. I mean the guys that we're going to say they didn't get it done. And it's going to make for a lot of great football talk as we lead up to the Super Bowl. I had the Chiefs and the Lions in the Super Bowl as part of the Inside the Birds season preview. We all did. Myself, Adam Kaplan, Andrew DeCecco. I went back and looked. Came out last week, first week of September, right before the season opener. I had the Lions and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and I'm going to stick with that. Not to be stubborn and say I picked it, so I'm going to stick with it. I mean, I'm going with the two number one seeds. I'm going with the two teams that I really do believe are the best in their conferences. And that doesn't mean they're going to play each other, and a lot of times you don't get the top seed versus the top seed. Last year, I think you did. Chiefs 49ers. I think last year was number one seed versus number one seed. Doesn't always happen, though, and I think it'll be pretty tough because there are some really good wild card teams in both conferences. So it's going to be tough for both number one seeds, but they are battle tested. They are ready for the moment. And to me, the Lions, I've said it before, I've said this now for about 5 or 6 weeks. They remind me of the 2017 Eagles. You can take this player away. You can take that player away. This guy can get hurt. That guy can get hurt. They're on a mission. They are a very complete team. They are very strong in the offensive trenches, as you saw this year with their Pro Bowl and All-Pro honors. They're extraordinarily well coached. They're well disciplined, and they are going to be a tough out no matter who they play. Now, can anything happen? Sure. You know, there's always some surprising things that happen in the postseason. There's some blowouts that you never imagined are going to happen. There's just games that just, teams kind of, there's injuries. Because like 2 years ago when the Eagles beat the 49ers in the conference championship game. Did I think the Eagles were going to win that game? Yes. Was it made a lot easier for them by Brock Purdy getting hurt very early in and then Josh Johnson getting hurt and then Purdy with a UCL injury having to go back in and continue to play? Yeah. Some of those things happen. Things snowball. There'll be that this postseason. I don't know which games, but there'll be some surprises. But I think in general, most of the games will be very, very competitive. And as we get into the divisional round and then the conference championship in the Super Bowl, I'm expecting some really, really good games. As for surprises, the Buffalo Bills, they're the 2 seed. I wouldn't quite say it's a surprise if they get to the Super Bowl, but certainly they're a dangerous team. If you're going to ask me who the most dangerous team going into the playoffs from the AFC is, though, I might tell you it's the Baltimore Ravens. I might tell you that. They play tonight, 8 p.m., only because Lamar is great. Derrick Henry's great. Mark Andrews has come on lately. They've got really good pass catchers. We know Flowers not going to play tonight, but we'll see if they get him back. And their defense, which was such a sieve early on, especially in the secondary, has changed. They made some personnel changes and formational changes in what they do over the last month and a half of the season that has really helped them. So they're a very, very dangerous team. We all remember this. The season opened with them playing the Chiefs and them losing because Likely catches a ball with his toe slightly out of bounds on the last play, and that's it. That's how they lost the game. So the Ravens and the Bills, definitely very good. In the NFC, I don't know if there's going to be any surprises, honestly. I think that, I told you, I think the Lions are going to come out of the NFC. The Eagles could beat the Lions, absolutely. The Eagles are probably the most talented team, talented, most talented team doesn't mean best team, but as far as blue chip talent, the Eagles have the most, I would say. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's an Eagles Lions conference championship game. But if it's not, Minnesota has been great all year. It wouldn't be a surprise if they came out of the NFC. And then everybody else, I'd be shocked. So I mean, I don't think the Commanders, I don't think the Buccaneers, I don't think the Rams have per se what it takes. So that if any of those teams came out of the NFC, I would be amazingly surprised. If it's the Lions, the Eagles, or the Vikings, I'm not that shocked. I think that would be what most people would expect. All right, let's get into some playoff matchups. Playoffs? We're talking about playoffs? You bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is the key to winning in the playoffs, and you can score big by betting on them at DraftKings, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score 6. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. The lines are already up on DraftKings. The Eagles, 4.5-point favorites against the Packers. Lines and odds are subject to change. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code BIRDS pregame. That's code BIRDS pregame, all one word, for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. The first game, wild card game, Chargers at Texans. The Chargers are 3-point favorites. You've heard me say for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks that the Texans will win the AFC South, but they will not look good in doing so, that they are not the same team from last year. They have offensive line problems. Those have trickled to the quarterback. They have just offensive problems in general. They lost a few guys on defense. They're just not a team that I look at going into the playoffs as a team that will meet the expectations that we had of them going into the year. And the expectations were, and I went back, like I said, I looked at the story, our season preview. Me, Kaplan, DeCecco, I think we all had C.J. Stroud as the MVP of the league. That was our prediction, that he was going to win MVP. We all had the Texans as this team that we thought was going to be a very good team and a potential rival to the Chiefs to make it to the Super Bowl. They have been anything but, and it's not surprising that even as a 4th seed and even at home, they are not favorite over the Chargers to win this game. So the Chargers are 3-point favorites. And I actually look further into it. On DraftKings, the Texans, a division winner, are tied with the Steelers, who lost their last, 4 games of the year, for the highest odds to win the Super Bowl at something like plus 9,000. Okay. So that tells you all you need to know about how that team is viewed. The Texans are viewed. They're a struggling team, and they are most likely going to be a one-and-done team. And they have the same odds to win the Super Bowl as a wild card team from their conference that lost the last 4 games of the year. That's all you need to know about the Texans right there. So Chargers, 3-point favorites. The Chargers have a very good defense. They don't score a lot. They do score sporadically. They figure out ways to move the ball. Justin Herbert has played well. I don't think that they're going to pummel the Texans by any stretch of the means, but I can see this being like a 27-16 type of win for the Chargers, 24-13. I just think that the Chargers defense will hold the Texans in check, and the Chargers will score enough points to win, but I don't think they're going to be, lighting up the scoreboard by any stretch of the imagination. Steelers then at Ravens. That's the night game. No Zay Flowers for the Ravens. That hurts. The Ravens are 9.5 point favorites. I struggle with this one. I think the Ravens are going to win. That's not what I'm struggling with. This is a rivalry game between two AFC North teams that, frankly, don't have much love for each other, that tend to play very close games against each other, that know each other. I know that the Steelers lost by 17 the last time they played, so and that was a couple weeks ago. So the Ravens definitely, they went 1-1 against each other. The Steelers won the early one earlier in the year by a close margin, 18-16, and then the Ravens at the end of the year after they got a little bit more, they shook off that Eagles loss, got a little healthier, got their stuff together, had the bye week. Then they came out and got the job done. They beat the Steelers when they needed to, 34-17. And they have scored over 31 points in each of their last four games. They basically ran through their December schedule. 35-14 over the Giants, 34-17 over the Steelers, 31-2 over the Texans, and then 35-10 over the Browns. So that's why I say they're a very, very dangerous team going into the playoffs. Do they cover the 9.5 against their longtime divisional rival? I wouldn't want to touch that, but I do think the Ravens will be advancing. The Steelers have a problem. It's the same problem they face all the time in the post Ben Roethlisberger era. It was the same problem they faced in the pre Ben Roethlisberger era. Very good defense, good running game, offensive line be a little healthier in the playoffs, but the quarterback's a problem. It was a fun 3 to 4 weeks for Russell Wilson to throw the moon ball to Pickens and throw the moon ball to Mike Williams occasionally and start to look like a quarterback who was that guy who was leading the Seahawks to Super Bowls. But I always say this about the ebb and flow. What you are is what you are. It will come back. And lately, Russell Wilson has not looked like a very good quarterback. All right. They put up 13 against the Eagles. They put up 17 against the Ravens, 10 against the Chiefs. And then facing the Bengals, knowing that a win could have clinched them in the division, knowing that the Bengals were coming in hungry, another division opponent, they lose 19-17. This team has scored 27 points in its last two games. And I just told you the Ravens have averaged over 30 points a game in their last four games. All right. The Ravens are averaging over 30 points a game at the start of December. The Steelers are averaging about 15 points a game. So I get it. I get the line. I totally understand. I get that the Ravens blew out the Steelers last time they played, but this is the playoffs. And I don't know, man. I feel for Steelers fans. I do. They are one competent quarterback away from being a really, really tough team. Now, Mike Tomlin's the guy who wants to go with Russell Wilson, and it looked good. It looked like another great Mike Tomlin decision for about 6 or 7 weeks. Offensively for not that long, but as a team, 6, 7, 8 weeks, it looked really good. Now, not so much, and we'll see what happens when they play. Sunday's 1 o'clock game is Broncos at Bills. The Bills are 8.5 point favorites. This is not an easy game for the Bills. First of all, you're playing the Broncos. They're a very physical team. They have a great defense. They're a tough team. They're playing the AFC West, so they've played the Chiefs twice. All right. They're battle tested. I know that the second game against the Chiefs was the season finale and the Chiefs didn't play anybody. But my point is they play the Chiefs all the time, and the Chiefs are pretty good. Uh, they have a lot of good pass rushers. It's not easy to pass rush against Josh Allen because he can get out of the pocket, he can escape. But the Broncos also have a good secondary. Patrick Surtain is a good player. Their defense has been. I'm not going to count the season finale, but last month of the season, it's been vulnerable at times, but they're still very good. So when I see that the Bills are 8.5 point favorites, I pause a little bit because the Bills were gifted 6 wins this year against the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Patriots. Those were 3 bad teams, and I'm pretty sure that when the Bills played the Dolphins, if not both times, one time, there was no Tua. Um, so they were gifted 6 wins against really bad teams. And that doesn't make me think the Bills aren't Super Bowl champions or caliber, because the Patriots used to be gifted 6 wins a year against the Bills, Jets, and Dolphins too. Every once in a while, one of those teams would be decent. Like the Dolphins would be okay, or the Jets would be okay. But in general, because we know the Patriots always would lose once a year to the Dolphins. But in general, it's a very easy division. And the last month of the schedule for the Bills, they're basically playing tiddlywinks and winning football games. So I think the Broncos will come in and be very physical, and Sean Payton will have a plan for Knicks. Knicks can be up and down. He can be erratic, but he also uses his mobility, his athleticism to make plays. They will run the ball well. They will be able to move the ball against this Bills defense well enough to make it competitive. I guess what I'm saying is I don't see some kind of 31-10 win for the Bills coming. I think the Broncos will be formidable. I think this will be an interesting game. I think it'll be an exciting game. I think the Bills will win, but I think you'll leave this game thinking that the Broncos, who've had a very good bounce back year, had to absorb all that dead cap and go ahead with a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. I believe you'll leave this game thinking that the Broncos are pretty good to, in year two of Nix next year, you make a few more additions on offense, maybe get a little bit more explosion, maybe get a running back, right? Maybe do a little bit more on defense, that the Broncos will be a team going into 2025 season that you will think will have a chance to make some noise. Not ready yet, but we'll have some chance to make some noise. 4:30 Sunday, of course, Packers at the Eagles. Will have that covered on Inside the Birds pregame show. Myself, Adam, Greg Cosell. So I won't get too much into it. The Eagles were 5.5-point favorites. These are two teams. Eagles fans are very surprised that the Eagles weren't a bigger favorite against this Packers team. Packers team is a good team. I mean, their only losses were against really good teams. They lost 6 games. 2 of them came to Minnesota. 2 of them came to Detroit. You're talking about the two best teams from a record standpoint in the NFC. And then, of course, the loss came to the Eagles, who are tied with the Vikings for the second best record in the NFC. So that's 5 losses right there. And then the last loss came in the regular season when they pulled their starters. So yeah, I'm concerned that they go into the playoffs on 2 straight losses, but they have talent. They just don't do enough to win these close games. Adam Kaplan has made that point, and he's right about it. And of course, they don't have Watson, and they don't have Jair Alexander. So it's going to be a little bit tougher on them. Love may be a little banged up with the elbow, but they're still a very good team that is a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. And they're a cold weather team, so they're not going to be fazed by whatever the weather is like here in Philadelphia. And you have to admit, the Eagles have some question marks with their kicking game, which always comes in play in the playoffs, right? And they've got a little bit of question mark with the passing offense. They can run the ball on anybody. The Packers run the ball really well too. But the passing offense has been inconsistent, and it's hard to think that the Eagles are going to make it to the Super Bowl without a few games where Hurts is going to have to make more than 12 to 15 completions. So that's why I think the Packers are a formidable opponent. I think the Eagles will win. I guess I just gave away my pick for the pregame show. I won't give you a score yet. I do think the Eagles will win, but I think going into the fourth quarter, this will still be a 1-possession game. The 8 o'clock game Sunday night, Commanders at Bucs. Very hard game. The Bucs can score on anybody, with anybody. It's funny, they beat the Lions this year. It's the Lions' only loss, and I think it was like 20-16, if I'm not mistaken. So 2 high-scoring teams went and played each other early in the year, and it was week 2, and somehow the Bucs won that game 20-16 in a defensive battle. Chuck that one up to one of those regular season games that nobody can explain and make sense of. That's the way that game went, because both of these teams can score. The Bucs can score. The Commanders can score. I don't think the Commanders are great defensively, but they've got some good veterans. They have some good defensive players. They do have a good front six. Luvu, Wagner. These Wagner has a lot of playoff experience. Bland, it's not Bland. Payne and Allen. I don't know why I said Bland. Payne and Allen. They've got some guys in between who can do some damage. Marshawn Lattimore's going to play, so he'll match up against Mike Evans. I think this is going to be a very close game. I think Bucs being 3-point favorites at home is basically DraftKings telling you it's a pick 'em, and I'm having trouble with this one. The Bucs are an offense that's going to score a lot of points on structure. The Commanders are an offense that is not loaded with a lot of talent, but will score enough points off structure. Or Jaden Daniels will just make tremendous throws to Terry McLaurin, to Zach Ertz. The one thing you like about the Commanders is they have great veteran leadership. They have guys who have won Super Bowls, right? They've got Zach Ertz. They've got Wagner. Okay, they've got a guy who's been to the playoffs a lot on the offensive line in Biadasz. Hasn't won a Super Bowl, but he's been to the playoffs. They got Lattimore, playoff experience. So they're not going to crumble. I can't see the Commanders, having a bad game and it goes off the rails and they're lose by 20 points. So this should be a really good game. If I'm not mistaken, this is a rematch of the season opener for both teams. And I remember saying in this first show that we did, this is a tough first game for Jaden Daniels because to face Todd Bowles' defense in your first game is really, really difficult. And it's not that his defense is great. It's just complex. They come at you from everywhere. They got droppers, they got rushers, they got stunters, they got loopers. And, Tampa Bay won that game 37-20. And then after that, Daniels got hot. They win 4 in a row and 7 out of 8. So I expect the rematch to be a lot more competitive. Neither team winning would be a surprise to me. I think it'll be one of the more fun games of the weekend to watch. I think experience that the Commanders have, and the Bucs, of course, have experience too, helps them. And we'll see. The matchup to me is that you really got to watch is Cliff Kingsbury against Todd Bowles' defense because Cliff has done a masterful job. He's getting head coaching interviews, and the Bucs defense has not been great this year. They win, they give up a lot of points though. The Bucs defense at times looks very good, and then other times, when they're playing the Panthers and the Saints, they're not giving up a lot of points. They played the Cowboys, they lost 26-24. They did a really good job against the Chargers. Chargers don't score a lot of points. So they did a good job against the Raiders. The Raiders don't score a lot of points. Giants, they've played a lot of teams that just don't score a lot of points. But when they played the Chiefs, they give up 30. When they played the Falcons, they give up 31. When they played the Ravens, they give up 41. So it's not a great Bucs defense, despite Todd's reputation for putting out really good defenses. But again, this is not an explosive, fantastic, amazing Washington offense. It has scored a lot of points, but it's basically a two-man show between McLaurin and Jaden Daniels. Then you get the Monday night game, Vikings against the Rams. This game was moved to Glendale, Arizona, where the Cardinals play because of the fires in LA. Obviously, my thoughts, my well wishes, my prayers, everything goes out to people in the LA area. Their homes are getting destroyed. Lives, in this case, will get destroyed. Valuables, pets, everything. It's almost shocking to see that California has this issue almost every year. And it just seems right now like there's no prevention in sight, and people have to lose their homes and their properties. So I just wanted to offer my best. I know we at Inside the Birds have a lot of viewers who are from the West Coast, all over the map, but in California as well. And I'm sending out my best to everybody. So the game will be played in Glendale, Arizona. I don't think that's a huge deal for the Rams because, as we all know, when the Rams play at home against teams that have good travel bases, it sounds like a home game for the other team anyway. So why should the wild card game be any different? The Rams are actually they are home underdogs, and it's not because they're not playing in their own home. It's because the Vikings are a better team. Vikings are 2.5-point favorites. The Rams are a Jekyll and Hyde team. They've got this young, energetic defense that gives you a lot of optimism for what they'll be able to do defensively going into next year and beyond. Fisk has been great. Jared Verse, I believe, made the Pro Bowl. Got some young guy. Got Byron Young. They have good players. Colby, Turner. They're good. on defense at times. Really can be very good. And then there are times where, they played the Dolphins, they gave up a lot of points. They played the Eagles, they gave up a lot of points. Then there are times they just look young and inexperienced. And this is a Vikings offense that has a lot of really good players that are going to be hard for the Rams to contain. The Rams are one of the best coached teams, though, in the NFL. They'll have a plan. I imagine that they will try to make this, as they usually do, a ball control game. Play keep away from the Vikings offense, run the ball with Kyren Williams, throw the ball to Puka Nacua. I imagine that they will not look to be a very explosive offense. They will look to try to keep it close. They will look to try to get third down conversions. They'll probably be aggressive on third down so that they can get close fourth downs like the Eagles do and then go for it on fourth down. That is the key for the Rams to win this game. They have to win time of possession. They have to control the ball. They cannot turn it over and give Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and Kevin O'Connell, who's done a great job calling plays. They can't give them opportunities. Now, that's a little bit easier said than done because Brian Flores will come at them defensively. He will try to make Stafford uncomfortable. He will try to make him hurried. He will try to speed up his clock with exotic blitzes. He will come at Stafford feverishly. It's a tough, tough team to play ball control style offense against. But again, nobody does that better than McVay. He's done it with Kyren Williams. He's done it in the past with Gurley. He's got two really good wide receivers who can move the chains, who don't have to beat you over the top with Nacua and with Kupp. I would like to see Kupp a little bit more involved. He may be on his last legs. I would say I'm probably more encouraged by the Rams defense going into next year than by the offense because I just, outside of Nacua and Kyren Williams, they really need to add. Stafford hasn't had a great year. He's been great at times. He's been inconsistent at times. So the Rams are underdogs. They should be underdogs. The Vikings should win this game, but there is a blueprint for the Rams to win this game, and it's not far from the blueprint that they've used to win games this year, which is control the ball, get third down conversions, get Kyren Williams the ball, run the ball, pop it to Nacua when you can, and try to play some pretty good defense at times. And the Rams aren't going to win. If the Rams win this game, it ain't going to be by 14, 15 points. The Rams don't blow people out. They squeeze by. And if they're going to beat the Vikings, it's going to have to be the same exact way, but it's going to be it's going to be a tough game for them. Going to be tough. If the Vikings get turnovers, if the Vikings are scoring easily, put 14, 21 points up on the board before halftime, forget it. I don't think the Rams got a chance, if that's the case. All right, I'll make my 3 picks. Last week was rough because week 18 is rough. You don't know. Certain teams will be resting starters, so you either pick against them or try to stay away from it. But you don't know what teams are going to pull starters at halftime. Like the Commanders did that, the Bears did that. You just don't know. A lot of teams were wacky in week 18. It was surprising. Tampa Bay struggled. Atlanta lost. They had everything to play for because they were playing at the same time as Tampa. They lost to the Panthers, was it? Either way, Tampa Bay struggled against the Saints. I mean, the Commanders were struggling before they pulled their guys. And, maybe Cliff Kingsbury deserves a job, not necessarily for the job that he's done with Jaden Daniels, but how about what Marcus Mariota has done for the Commanders when he's come in? He's looked like a completely different quarterback. But yeah, it was a very tricky week 18. So I went 1-2, and I finished the regular season at 31-23. So this week, I'm going to take the Broncos to cover that 8.5. I don't know that the Broncos are going to win, but I think that game's going to be a lot closer than the line suggests. I like the Eagles as 5.5-point favorites to beat the Packers. Think that whoever wins, I think that they'll win. Think they'll win by a touchdown. About that, I've really given away my pick now for that game. You'll have to watch the pregame show to see where Adam and Greg go with this. And I'm going to take the Vikings to cover the 2.5 on the road in Arizona against the Rams. So those are my 3 picks for the weekend. See, I don't get, we're in a bind now. We have fewer games. So we got to go pick some games that ordinarily we might want to stay away from, but that's the playoffs. Everything becomes tougher. Everything becomes tighter, and it puts guys like me in this position in a little bit of bind to make sure I pick the best I can, and we'll see. I did finish 31-23, not too bad, and hopefully I can build off that. Uh, the head coaches, you're obviously the cycle is going on. I thought that there was going to be as many as I thought that there could be as many as eight or nine head coaches openings, and there wasn't that many. So I believe right now, as we're looking at it, there's like six. Uh, Aaron Glenn is going to be an interesting one. The guy's he's done a great job with the Lions defense. He got like a standing ovation at I think it was at the Pistons game recently, and he deserved it. He's done an unbelievable job. He has ties to both organizations. He played 1 year in New Orleans, and then obviously was a coach there under Peyton. He was with Dan Campbell there. They came together to the Lions. I've always thought that that was a really good spot for him because he can take what he's learned in Detroit. He's done a phenomenal job as a coordinator, but he's learned how to then build a culture alongside Campbell and Ben Johnson. And I think when you go to New Orleans, it's not necessarily about having to rebuild a culture. New Orleans is generally a successful team, and they have a lot of good pieces on defense. Now, they haven't been a great team in a while, but for the longest time under Sean Payton, they were annually in the playoffs and they won a Super Bowl. And even under Dennis Allen, the wheels came off this year, but they were always a team that was tough defensively. They would give you some fight. The Derek Carr experiment just didn't work out. But they're not a laughing stock by any means. So he could get that thing turned around pretty quickly in New Orleans if he gets the head coaching job there and they get a quarterback. Now the Jets are an interesting spot for Aaron. He played for them under Bill Parcells. Aaron Glenn was a Jet during a time where it was okay to be a Jet. He was a two-time Pro Bowler for the Jets, played in the late 90s when they had Parcells. They went to an AFC Championship game. I think they were winning that game at one point against the Denver Broncos. Wound up losing, and then the Broncos went on to win the Super Bowl. But the Jets Bill Parcells had built a really solid Parcellsian team, in the late 90s there for the Jets with a great running game and Curtis Martin and an offensive line, a good defense, and Glenn was a big part of that as well. So Aaron Glenn's the type of guy who can go to the Jets and become a culture builder because he just went to another laughing stock of the NFL along with Campbell and Ben Johnson and built that thing up. So could he see the Jets as a challenge worthy of his time to rebuild? The one thing I would tell you is when they got to Detroit, all right, that was his first time to be able to be a coordinator. So you're going to take that job. And they were also on a new GM, Brad Holmes, who's done an excellent job. Now, they couldn't have predicted Brad Holmes. They may not have known how good Brad Holmes was going to be, but he's done a nice job, and they've all seemed to be in sync. With the Jets, there is almost never a harmony between the GM, the owner, and the coaching staff. And I said it the last two times we in this show. A lot has to do with the owner. Owner's clueless. So I don't know who the new Jets GM is going to be. Maybe the owner will be smart enough to let the head coach have a little bit of say. I'm not normally a fan of that, but in this case, I think maybe it's smart because the owner has not done a good job at all finding a GM who can build a culture alongside a head coach. And that's what that organization needs. So you just wonder about Aaron Glenn's mindset. If he gets offered both of these jobs, does he go to the place where he was won and was comfortable as a coach? New Orleans, that's not as far away. NFC South, you can certainly win the NFC South. It's not a juggernaut division, right? Or do you want to go and take on the ultimate challenge in New York with the Jets that you just helped accomplish in Detroit? I think it's a fascinating dilemma if that's the one that's going to confront Aaron Glenn. I hope he does get a head coaching job somewhere. Him and Ben Johnson, there's no doubt about it. The offense coordinator, Ben Johnson, have done unbelievable jobs. And they've done such good jobs, and they're so well set up for the future that you can understand if both of them are very selective and very picky about where they want to go. I did see that there was some interview requests for Steve Spagnuolo. You've heard me mention that a couple of times now. I think Steve can be a guy in his second chance as a head coach who's learned a lot, being alongside Andy, winning more Super Bowls as a defensive coordinator, learned a lot about building a program this time around than say the first time around. He could be like Dan Quinn in that regard, a defensive coach, but who knows the league, knows the best offensive minds, can bring them over to wherever he goes and build a culture there. I think Steve Spagnuolo can do that and would be a pretty good candidate who maybe not right now. It's like Aaron Glenn, it's Ben Johnson, maybe Liam Cohen. There are some other names that are getting a little bit more love, but I can see Spagnuolo being a guy to sort of take the bull by the horns there and in his second time around do a lot better as a head coach. And then we'll just see how the cycle. I will have to see what goes on with Dallas and Mike McCarthy. Looks like the other open jobs are the ones we knew about: Chicago, Oakland. Not Oakland. I'm sorry, Las Vegas. Sounds like Tom Brady's getting involved. There was that wacky report that Belichick was going to give up on North Carolina and then go to the Raiders. I'd be a little surprised if that happened. We'll see what Jacksonville goes. Jacksonville at least has a quarterback. We all may have our doubts on how good Trevor Lawrence is, but it's a little bit different than going to a franchise that has no quarterback and may not even have a top 3 or a top 4 pick. The Giants sticking with Dable. And the other, I'm trying to think of, San Francisco is going to have a new defensive coordinator again. What else is new? That's a team that really needs to refresh itself in the offseason, make a lot of changes, but really just adding here and there. The core, they'll figure out the Brock Purdy contract, but I think the 49ers can be a team that'll be right back in it next year, as long as they make the right changes and get a little deeper. Obviously, the Patriots linked to Mike Vrabel. I don't understand. This is where I think NFL owners and franchises really hurt themselves in the public eye when it comes to the hiring and firing of black coaches, especially in general. Why do you hire a coach, any coach, forget what race, religion, creed, why do you hire a coach for a year when you know you have a bad roster, when you know you're not ready to compete? Like the Patriots had a bad roster and were not ready to compete. They lost one of their best players, Christian Barmore, for I think for the whole year. He had a blood clot issue. Okay, they weren't ready to compete this year. The Patriots. That's why they started the year when they drafted Drake May with Jacoby Brissett. They just weren't ready. And the Raiders give the job to Antonio Pierce, and they give him nothing at the quarterback position. They signed Gardner Minshew to compete with Aiden O'Connell. They're not ready to compete. Yeah, you got Brock Bowers. Yeah, you got some good pass rushers. You obviously have the Condor. But that's not a team that was ready to beat the Chiefs, that was ready to make the playoffs. You need a quarterback. So why do you even give coaches the chance to show what they got in one year when you know that they don't have a fair roster to compete with? It's like you set coaches up to fail and then you fire them so that you can go hire a guy like Mike Vrabel, who I like, but who had a year where they made the AFC Championship, but then, other than that, 9-7, 10-6 before the playoff expansion. It's not like Mike Vrabel's got 13, playoff wins and 3 rings. This is where teams get themselves in trouble. And it does happen too often where a guy gets 1 year without a roster, without a quarterback, and then he gets dismissed after the year. And I think the league gets himself in trouble, and the optics of it look really bad, and it should look really bad. Don't hire a coach to fire him 1 year later when you know your roster stinks. How about that? And then you don't have to worry about the optics. Okay? Make smarter decisions. If you know you're not ready, but you must fire a head coach because it's just not working out, like the Patriots just had to move on from Bill Belichick. It wasn't working out for a while. Fine. Then either give the guy, Gerard Mayo, more of an opportunity to build a program, right? Or don't hire him in the first place. And they're going to say, yeah, and I know Joe Banner, we've talked to Joe Banner about this. If you realize you made a mistake, you have to cut ties immediately. All right. You have to see that you made a mistake and cut ties. All these teams made a mistake. Like, none of these guys are good coaches. Did they make mistakes? Maybe because you handed them dreck of a roster. And when they started losing and feeling the public pressure and didn't have an escape route, well, they kind of like didn't know what to do. Because remember, Bill Belichick got fired in Cleveland when he won 4 games that last year. All right, he had a bad roster. Guess what? I mean, so like, what are your expectations of a coach and how he conducts himself and how he handles himself? Mayo was in the building already when you hired him. Pierce was in the building. So it's not like you hired a guy for 1 year, didn't know much about him, thought you had an idea, saw some things that really alarmed you, and then you moved on. That's sort of like what happened to God, years and years and years ago. The Browns hired a guy, Jeff Jagged. I can't pronounce his name very well. Jeff Jagodinski, I think he was the offensive coordinator for the Panthers, if I'm not mistaken. All right, they hire him. It's funny because Joe Banner was the president, I believe, at the time, and he didn't even make it through a year, if my memory is correct. And they must have figured out, man, we thought he was head coaching material, but he was in our building. We watched him interact. We saw that he wasn't the guy. We had to cut ties. Can't be afraid to do that. I can get that. But when you hire and promote guys from your own building that you know that have been there, why aren't you sticking to your guns? Because you saw some things that maybe you thought he wasn't ready for. Again, it works hand in hand with the roster and the talent that you have. Of course, a guy is not going to be himself if he's feeling the pressure because you handed him a crappy roster and now he's feeling the crunch of being that 1 year head coach. Of course, you might not see the real guy. He might be pressing. Happens to athletes. Of course, it can happen to coaches. Just bothers me, man. It bothers me that guys who are good guys, who work hard, who deserve opportunities, get these opportunities, and then the rug gets pulled out from under them because of what? So you can go chase somebody else who won 9 games and, had a nice little playoff run 1 year. That to me makes absolutely no sense. And we see it far too often. And that's my rant on the head coaching cycle. And speaking of rants, I know some people, as we close out of here, wanted my opinion on the Penn State loss to Notre Dame. Listen, what's there to say, right? If you watch the game, you saw it with your eyes. I saw it with my eyes. Penn State was the better team, but Notre Dame got the better quarterback play. Fair? I mean, I'm not usually the guy who says, and I know people are going to say you're biased saying Penn State was the better team. Penn State ran the ball better. Notre Dame struggled to run the ball. Penn State rushed the passer better. Notre Dame didn't get a great pass rush. Not like Aller was on the ground. Penn State, in general, established itself in the trenches. But the quarterback couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Riley Leonard is not a special world-class quarterback for Notre Dame, but he made 4 or 5 throws that were pretty good throws. Now, one of them was to an open tight end who got open because the defender fell, and then the safety fell trying to reverse course to get to him, and so he had basically a gift touchdown that tied the game. And then, of course, they take advantage of a terrible, terrible Drew Aller interception on Penn State's last possession to get great field position, run the ball a little bit, kick a field goal. Penn State, you can't convince me, is not the better all-around team, but as we know, the better all-around team doesn't always win, and Notre Dame got the better quarterback play. Notre Dame got the better quarterback play, and they got the better coverage. Their secondary was very good, but let's be real. If you've watched Penn State all year, you know they have no wide receiving weapons. None. All right? They throw the ball to Tyler Warren. They throw the ball to their running backs. Every once in a while, they play a team that's not so good defensively, and they're able to pop one to Omari Evans or pop one to Trey Wallace. But the wide receivers not catching a pass angle that people love to throw at Penn State, that's not anything new to the Penn State fan. They knew that there weren't going to be a whole lot of wide receiver catches, and they've won games all year long without a lot of wide receiver catches. And guess what? The Irish had 3 receptions by wide receivers. 2 of them were swing passes or screen passes to face on. So it's not like Notre Dame was any different. All right. This wasn't about wide receiver play. This was about the quarterback for Penn State making some terrible, terrible throws. He had a touchdown to Nick Singleton, wide open Nick Singleton, and he made a bad throw. Could Nick have caught it? Yeah, maybe. But, make a better throw. He catches it easily. It's a touchdown. And then you get 4 extra points because they settle for a field goal, and then you don't lose by 3. Right? People want me to get on James Franklin. I am not the biggest James Franklin fan. I am not. I also don't run to try to fire him after every loss. I recognize the fact that he has recruited unbelievably. He has brought Penn State to a level it hasn't been at consistently in quite a long time. So I don't just want to fire him after every loss. But this loss in particular, if you're putting it on James Franklin, I'm asking you why? What? It's low hanging fruit to just say, well, he just didn't win a big game. Okay, great. But why didn't he win this big game? What was his fault? Was there bad clock management? I didn't see any. Was there bad time management or game management? No. The only thing I would question is in the second half, they have the ball, and Penn State has sort of lacked this killer instinct, and they're on their side of the field. I forget. They're maybe at the 38, and it's third and short, and they try a play action rollout. They try to get the ball to Warren. He's like double covered, held a little bit, and Eller has to throw it away. So then it's fourth and short. Do you go for it there? It's tough. It's a risky decision. It's certainly not a definite, yes, you go for it there. You're on your side of the field. It's a close game. You just struggle to move the ball. However, I would say if you did get it, and they were very good in general in converting in short situations, they had converted a fourth down in the game. If you go for it and get that fourth down and the clock's starting to wind down there, I think this was early in the fourth, and you're able to keep extending that drive, you might score on that drive. You may just take enough time off the clock so that, if disaster does happen like it did, there's still not enough time for Notre Dame. But that's not bad game management. That's 50-50. That's bang, bang. And frankly, where they were on the field and with their inability, with their quarterback not throwing the ball well, I don't blame them for punting it and hoping that the defense was going to play well. Penn State has to get wide receivers. There's no doubt about it. That is the one thing James Franklin, if you want to blame Franklin, he has run through wide receivers coaches. He's had like 5 in the last 6 or 7 years. There was a time where they were doing a good job developing that position. You guys remember they had guys playing in the NFL from Godwin, Allen Robinson, KJ Hamler. They don't have to be great NFL players, but they were really good college players who were drafted. Hamler, Deshaun Hamilton, Jahan Dotson, right? There was a really good stretch there where Penn State wide receivers would show up and win games for the Nittany Lions. Right now, they are a non-entity, and they have been like that for 3 years now, basically 2 years. 3? Wherever Dotson. This is Dotson's third year in the league, so 3 years now. Okay? He has to fix that, whether it's portal, whether it's recruiting, another new wide receivers coach. You want to put that on him as the head coach? Okay, but that's not why they lost, per se, the Notre Dame game. That's why they lose games like that to Ohio State and Notre Dame. But they could have beaten Notre Dame without throwing to the wide receivers, again, because Notre Dame beat Penn State without throwing to wide receivers. Don't turn the ball over and have your quarterback make 3 or 4 better passes. And actually, Penn State might have won that game. They were up 10-0. If Singleton punches it in for a touchdown instead of a field goal there, on the next drive round, I'm saying if they just execute a little bit better, they win that game by double digits. And remember, Notre Dame gets the game-tying touchdown when 2 guys fall. What are you going to do? I can't put that on Franklin. It's very disappointing. I don't know what else to say. We'll see who comes back for Penn State. I was not a happy guy. I was the most elated guy in the world, up 10-0. I was not a happy guy when that game ended, but I can't put it on Franklin. I put it on Aller not hitting Singleton for a touchdown. I put it on Aller's interception that gave them the ball deep in territory to set up the game-winning field goal. And I put it on 2 guys falling down on one play that gives Notre Dame a wide-open game-tying touchdown. That's it. When 2 good teams play, it comes down to plays like that. And Notre Dame made the plays, the 3 or 4 plays their quarterback made, that Penn State's quarterback didn't. All right, catch you guys all next week. Take care. Have a good time watching your football this weekend.